Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with
Uh-oh.
Rogan Smith and Candy and Ken. We just did a class photo.
That was
and
fun.
you can see the silly ones.
That was. I actually liked what you did.
They have to get it together. And to my shock and horror, the one who you would think would not be trying to fix up.
Is
But I can
call
say
the
that.
name.
You can call him. That's your boy.
Kendrick. So
Your
that's
boy.
your boy. If it ain't you, it ain't me and Candy. So your
That's
boy.
your boy.
Kendrick said, hold on now. I
I
hold
hold
up
on
my
my
shirt.
shirt. My mother looks sick. Anyway,
Kendrick,
everything's good.
That was so good.
Mm-hmm.
That
Team
was so
photo.
good.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
I went to Hampshire, the new one, this weekend. And let me just say this. I drove several hundred miles. I think I saw 4 people. So I just thought I'd bring that in.
Paper
For
on the
what?
ground?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I
4
want to get into
in
something.
hundreds of miles.
Oh, I'm going to call off
Per person?
well, I don't know the person.
Anything to
I
do
know
with me?
No, sir.
Okay, good.
It's the car that threw some garbage out
Okay,
on
cool.
the
I
can't-
Darling Highway this morning.
I can't
gotta find my
stand to
thing.
see that.
See, at least when you do it, I know it's a real thing.
When I
You know,
do
because
it?
you don't want no, people who are vindictive.
No, man. No.
Uh-huh.
I recorded a portion of it, but I was driving
Okay.
at the same time, so I had to be careful.
Okay.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But anyway, you saw 4 pieces of paper.
4 hundreds.
And you
And
drove
probably-
hundreds of
And
miles.
I really was looking hard for them. I don't even know if it was paper. It might have been something shiny. You know? I said, well, let me count that. Because I don't want to say none.
My God.
I saw 3 blacks.
Yeah, you in the Hampshire.
This is in Maine. Maine.
No, you ain't
Yeah,
gonna see that.
I think we brought more than they have there.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, this is what a friend of mine, and well, my goddaughter got married in New Hampshire, and she lives up in Maine. So I said to her, Abby, love her to death. I said, obviously, you don't want to be around. You don't want to be around us no more, because we ain't coming back up here. I mean, that crew ain't coming. This crew ain't coming back up here no more.
Oh,
This is the
wow.
last run.
How did they feel about, because it was, y'all travel deep, eh?
I mean, deep.
Plenty.
That means-
Yeah. I don't know about travel deep.
I mean, how many of y'all
It was.
traveled up there?
It was actually. It was
More
it
than
was, no,
15?
It was yeah. But
See that?
it was family. It was just. It wasn't a bunch. So it was like proportionate to family to friends to family to their family.
Right. No, I'm just saying, like you said, you brought, more
Well, we bring a crew. That's how we are. No, it was really nice. So and the wedding once again. I want to teach my behaving people some things, man. Save yourself some headache. Wedding started at 4:30, and at 4:48.
That's my kind of wedding.
The little intro by the person who was doing the thing. Exchange of vows. Announcement of the
Signing,
bride
right.
Tingham. No, sign it. Announcement of the bride and Tingham. March on.
So when did they sign this
Sign
thing?
that sometime. We don't care about that.
oh,
Why do we care about that?
I don't know. I guess
Isn't
I...
it-
Why do I
Isn't it
give a
part,
damn
it's not
that you're
supposed to be a
signing
part of
this
the
thing?
ceremony?
Stick
I-
that
I-
into the pictures.
Go sign it
Oh,
somehow.
I mean, I guess it's
Sign
been
it
a
before
part
you
of it
reach.
for so long, I thought that you had to. Sorry.
You have to sign it, but don't. You ain't
Not,
got
gotta sign
not
it right
during,
then.
You
yeah.
could have signed that. They could have signed that before they reach.
Right, okay.
I don't even care.
Precisely. Yeah.
Okay.
I
But
didn't
you gotta
know.
have a whole production. You gotta
You knew
hold
that?
a trail.
No.
You gotta have 2 people. Listen. Let me tell you something. This is why we have financial difficulties. We spending money on train. Okay.
Another locomotive.
Yeah. Okay. And 18 million bridesmaids.
Right. That I don't
And-
understand.
I'm not in the bridesmaid business, but I might as well tell you, if I was a friend, they call me about being a bridesmaid, and they tell me the bill is like 2,000. I'll say, well, listen, I have all the diseases that week.
See, that's
I
what I'm
can't
saying.
make
Like
it.
people just don't be considerate when you have somebody coming in, you want somebody to stand in your wedding. Great, that's fine. But at least be considerate to people's pockets, right?
Right.
And like I always say, if you want to be having these extravagant, attire for your bride and stuff, then are you footing the bill in some way, shape, or form?
Well, I
Here's
want
the
y'all
deal.
to
Are you-
look this way, so
But
this is how...
You know what I'm saying?
You know whose
At
problem
your
it
cost.
is, though, right?
hmm What's that?
The bridezilla?
It ain't the Mennonites,
The who?
the Mennonites,
Oh.
the men's them.
Well, I mean, majority,
Yeah.
of course, is
Okay.
the
You have
brides.
some high maintenance guys.
Yeah,
so
but
don't-
they need
but-
all of that.
They-
They got a whole stuff. They got things now. First of all, I learned about another one. I'm skipping the bride. The child reveal BS. You heard about that
Oh,
one?
gender
The gender
reveal.
reveal.
Oh God.
I
Dang.
know, that's becoming big, too.
And it's becoming kind of old now.
Well, let's put it this way. I
It's
know
just something else to spend money
money
on.
on, right?
This is
Or
up
the
until
gender reveal.
2000
Just to call them and tell them what you having.
up until 2000 at least 18. I didn't know about this. I mean, I'm only guessing because it's 2018. I'm assuming it's 5 years old or more.
No,
Why
I
do
think-
I
When did they
care?
start doing that?
This has been a
this
couple
is
good
just-
years now. Like
yeah, but it's
5,
really
6
got big.
years.
know about
But
that
now,
past year or
it's
so.
like crazy.
Everybody's doing
What?
it.
Oh, we come to our
Well, if you
gender reveal
recall, for
parties.
many
So-
years, people didn't even want to know who the child was. It was a surprise, or you didn't know. So you had to
I
wait.
wouldn't wanna know.
It couldn't have been in the non-ultrasound years, so we could discount that. Okay. So now that we got the ultrasound, he's telling you who he is, and now
Just
we're
tell
gonna
the
have a
people what
thing.
they ask.
You know what? It's better to just say, "Send me some money." That's all it's about. Send me some money.
Wait,
'cause-
do people buy presents for gender
Oh,
reveal?
you have to have.
See, that's
There's
the next
demands
thing.
now, you know.
No, but
It's
you
a
gotta be
whole,
kidding.
it's
Oh,
a
there are
whole other
demands.
event.
Wait,
there's
but the
demands.
shower is for that. So,
no,
so what, you bringing
no.
gifts to the
That's
gender reveal?
post marriage now.
Listen,
This is a child reveal.
listen. I don't
care
yes,
what you're
gender
having.
reveals.
What you
people
do is
still
anytime
bring
you send out
stuff,
invites, they have a list of demands. Like what we doing is we buying a house for the child,
and we wonder why we stress
and we want
out.
you to spend us.
Ain't no
we keep
major.
we
adding
need
stuff.
$1,800 each.
There's something else we have to do now. Now I gotta do this, and
You
I
ain't
I
gotta
have
do
to
it. Just
attend
don't
this,
go.
I tell y'all, you
know?
see, y'all ridicule me, you belittle me. I can't make it.
Well, then
I
don't
just
make
can't
it.
make it.
I mean,
Okay?
That's fine if
Put that
that's
in
what they
your
want
column.
to
Do
do.
your column. We call them about the reveal. Okay?
It's just so silly to me. I
I
ain't on that
agree.
run. I ain't on that run. You
I
what?
am always away.
Every time they having that? You went to a wedding.
I'm
So
off.
you were
That's
away
my
for
God,
that.
and you know that I won't get into that.
So?
But that's my godchild, so I got to make a little run. But the point is, what I'm saying is,
I would think that
I
you
can't
say
make
you
it.
ain't going.
No, you got to want to. First of all, look at it. It was very, very civilized, very simple, very basic.
You still have to spend a bunch of money.
No, I had to spend
Bride
some money.
calls off wedding after guests won't pay $1,500 to attend.
To
Girl,
attend.
bye.
We'll call it off.
Girl, bye.
Who-
Call it off. Who
you
you
ain't-
fighting?
You ain't getting a piece that night. That's all.
Everybody laughing at you right now.
Hey.
Can't you use my name?
I saw that somewhere too. That's ridiculous.
$1,500? You're not gonna do that kind of money?
And then
You
they'll
could buy
say
a
it's probably
scooter.
like that's their contribution to the like instead of a gift like a fork, bring it 1,500.
But
How you-
1,500.
$1,500. How y'all feel about people asking for money though? For a
I'm
wedding.
not. I'm
I
not.
don't-
big
I'm
on
not
it.
opposed to
I,
that.
I'm not.
I'm
I don't feel good about it.
I don't feel good about it either.
No, I'm sorry.
I'd
I
rather,
feel-
I don't know. I'd rather purchase.
Because
the
you know
gift,
why?
but
How
not
much?
The,
So
the
you want to
cash.
say,
I feel like
bring me
it's a
some money?
making
Okay, no
scheme.
problem. Here's $5.
No.
And then you
They
can't
want
even,
you to five.
exactly. They ain't want no $5. Then people feel funny. You can't bring $20. You can't bring $50. They expecting big money.
Listen, man, it's just
These
changed
expectations
dramatically.
are
Yeah,
This-
crazy.
I mean, but you're not gonna spend $5 on a gift.
What
You're
do I
not
know?
gonna
no,
spend
no,
$5
but
on a
I'm saying,
gift.
but that's the point. It's putting you in a
Let
scenario.
me ask you something. Why do I have to buy a gift? Period.
Well, I'm not gonna.
That's
Why do
the
I-
Yeah, I
question.
agree with
You
that.
are
I
having
don't
your
disagree.
wedding, right? You want me to be a part of your ceremony
You know, my
to
recommendation
attend as a
is-
guest. So why do I have to
Yeah,
buy
so you know
you?
what my
Yeah, this
recommendation
tradition
is.
goes back from
My
since
recommendation
I don't
is
ask you
the
to
this.
put
beginning
nothing.
of time.
Well,
You
yeah,
bring
I mean,
gifts.
you have to bring the dowry and all that, but
Right.
this is my recommendation. This is the same recommendation I have for
Well,
like
not that, but-
selling other people raffles and stuff. Pay for your own things. So in other words, if rather than having a big wedding, which costs you about what $30,000, save that, go to the JP, and
That's
you
what
got
I did.
$30,000, and then you ain't got to ask me for nothing.
That's what I did.
Sight.
That's what I did. My husband and I spent $88 for our wedding.
You have to get out
You know
of the
what's
mode.
$88?
For
the
the
fee.
for the fee,
At
yeah.
the Georgia courthouse.
Mhm.
You understand? And that was a wrap on. We went to dinner after
Mhm,
that.
yeah.
And that was a wrap
And
on
you
that.
fed yourselves. This whole thing about feeding other people has got to stop. I know. Let me tell you something. This is what I know for a fact. And anyone who's feeling like offended or anything like that when I'm speaking, think about this. While you're at the actual wedding, you, whoever is hosting it, and I'm going to be in the trap. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be thinking the same way. You're thinking, my God, what am I doing? How am I going to pay this bill? This is what you're thinking. You're looking at these people eat you. You better eat that chicken.
I can tell you
better-
something right after this.
Mhm.
I
You
can
better
tell you
eat that
something.
chicken.
I can tell you something.
You can tell me something. But it's crazy. It's the expenditure level on the flowers, and they go to
Listen,
waste.
Listen,
They go to waste.
a person who shall remain nameless.
Nameless?
I participated in this individual's wedding,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Along the way, I kept telling this
Nameless
individual, nameless them. I
Uh-huh.
kept telling nameless them,
Mhm.
you might want to scale back. You might want to. I know you won the wedding of
They
your
might want
dream. I know you might. I know you want the wedding of your dream. Everybody wants it, but you know what? Just kind of like
Just dream
scale
about
back
it
a little
instead.
bit. Scale back a bit. Didn't listen.
Uh-huh.
Went all out.
And then,
It
by
was
the way,
beautiful.
How much weeks after?
What's that?
Hold on,
When I-
let us
Separate.
finish.
He does all the time.
No, let's-
He
let's
does all the
banter.
time.
Let's go.
I banter
You talk-
during your
Okay, scale
main
back
trip.
then.
I banter during your
scale
main trip.
back.
I told this person scale back, right?
Y'all like bad children, bad.
It's
Scale
him.
back.
It's him. And did not listen. Added on even more stuff. Added
did
on
add
even
on?
more stuff, right? So the wedding happened, and it was beautiful,
Gorgeous.
gorgeous wedding,
Okay.
beautiful wedding.
Waited.
Huh?
Waited. It was waited.
Wait, listen, it was, I don't know.
Oh.
At the end, have a good day. I'll see you later. I receive a call like 3 days later
Contra.
asking
Another?
me
For a little
if
piece.
I could
Make a little
lend this
donation.
individual some money because this
Oh, no,
individual did not have groceries
Shrees.
after
They ain't had no
the
shrees.
wedding.
They ain't had no shrees.
Well, obviously they didn't. go
And
on
what do you
a
think I
honeymoon.
said?
Well, I know you, so you tell them to jump in the lake.
You're kind,
Okay.
but along that alley.
Yeah. Well, I am kind.
Because you know why? I told you not to do this.
Well, you did- you mean you
I
didn't
would,
give-
here's
and
the
even
thing,
if
you
I
don't
was
have to
them, I
listen to
wasn't
me.
coming to
You
you.
were in the
Well,
wedding.
that was
You don't-
not a smart move.
Were you in the? I don't know.
You don't have to listen to me, right? But I should be the person who you never want to call
But
for
listen,
money.
That's what I'm
listen,
saying.
you
Why
ain't
would
give
you?
people
I
them-
wouldn't
Call
have
somebody
called you.
else.
You ain't give the people them little shrees.
That means they didn't.
Little bear
They weren't
basket.
checking.
Ain't got no VAT on it, you know.
If you see
They weren't
Candy
checking.
tells me, Rogan, you're being crazy right now. Candy's the last person on the
Listen,
planet I
I
call
don't
in
want
for money
you
to
to tell
throw it
me
in my
that.
face.
Did you get anything out of your closet, like a little rice, a little whatever, drop that bag?
No, sir.
So you eat your own rice.
I eat my rice, my peas,
Uh-huh.
my
All right.
chicken, and I was
By the
good.
way, you know you said I would not critique your thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not critiquing, but from now on, don't say coleslaw, please.
Coleslaw?
No. Slaw.
I say coleslaw.
Okay, well, we can say slaw.
I don't say
okay?
coleslaw.
We don't say coleslaw. We
I
say,
say coleslaw.
give me some slaw.
No.
We'll be right back.
Sounds so nasty. I know.
Anyway, if you have a pet, don't it takes tight. Don't wear that pet can stop by.
That's
I may help the pet more than
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Yeah, you're gonna go around and give the pet a little something.
Yeah. The chicken
You know,
bone or
take
something.
him on a little ride. Get a little, I mean, I know
I'm
this is
an
highfalutin
animal
for
lover.
a pet, but you're gonna get a little KFC for the pet.
I give it a KFC for the pet. All I'm saying
Anyway,
is don't
do
be.
you see how I
don't be-
worked around
don't
that?
Be, don't be silly with your money.
Do you see I worked around that? Uh-huh. It's not the same thing, eh?
it's
With your bun.
People don't learn.
The
I
two
mean,
of y'all got
they're going to
bun.
continue to do it. Just like
How much you think
people
this Easter?
continue to get married, people can continue to have children.
They can keep doing that. Let me do something. Let me ask you. I don't know if anybody else that's been experiencing theft in the western area of gas tanks. I've had
Theft?
2 gas tanks go missing.
What kind of gas tanks?
Oh,
What is a
cooking
gas
Like the
tank?
jerry
Cooking
cans?
gas tank.
Oh, you
Cooking
mean
gas tank.
Oh, I thought you meant like
the
cycling.
jerry
People
cans.
like cut,
Yeah.
Gas
cut my
out of the
things
car.
twice
Mm.
and stolen the gas tank.
The
Yeah.
whole gas tank.
The whole you got to be a bold one to go in the back of someone's yard.
And it's got to be you and someone else.
Yeah, to lift that tank.
hmm
But I want to know if that's happening in the West where a lot of people.
There was a time when that was happening before,
Yeah.
and you would notice that people have their gas tanks actually
Chain,
barred out.
like that.
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
chain,
right
they
cut
cut the what you call it, the chain around it.
Uh-huh.
They cut that. So now I got to build a cage around this stuff.
Yeah, it's called
I
gas
get
You
cage.
always got stolen.
I got some stuff twice.
Oh, you said twice.
Twice.
Well, they know you could. Okay, we going back for it. That was like with my tools. You remember in the house when y'all laugh at me?
When is with Soldier Road though?
Yes.
When y'all laugh at me.
When he
They
went
say
to
that
go
every
hunt the
3
guy
months they
down.
take that. Every 3 months. I was their tool shop.
We're getting down the edge.
Yeah.
Boy, look here.
It's got to be going on though. I don't
Yeah.
know, but yeah, like you say, Candy, there ain't no one person doing it because
No,
to lift a
man.
gas tank.
Because you're right. Unless they
Shoot.
checking and waiting until it gets to
I
us.
got something for the next person who
Yeah.
come there.
What you gonna do?
It's
Blow 'em
gonna
up?
be explosive.
Yeah.
Oh,
Shoot the
jeez.
tank when they there.
No, I ain't gonna be there.
Oh my
No, but you
I
can do
agree
it like a
there.
sniper.
I ain't gonna be there.
Don't blow up your
Yes.
house, though.
No, everything gotta go.
So what else is up? There was something else I wanted to talk to you guys about. But anyway, that's it. But yeah, going back to this New Hampshire thing, it is disheartening when you can go through hundreds of miles. I mean, I drove from the airport that I had to drive to and back was an hour and 45 minutes. That's a long time. That's over It's over 80 miles. It's like 100 miles, right? So the fact of the matter is, all that way, people kept their roadsides. Well, they didn't litter. Okay? And yet,
I
you
can't
know,
find this
you pull
thing.
out into NP.
You
They have
probably-
box and thing. It's just
just so
you know. I'll tell you
disgusting,
one
man.
thing. I'll tell you one thing. It's cause to be ashamed. And if anyone wants to, you know how we like to say, well, you looking down on me and all that. And you know how we like to say,
I
yes,
so hate
I
when
am
people say
looking
that.
down on you
I'm too
because
bad.
you're a slob.
You're nasty.
Okay? Yeah. So if you're a slob, this place for a slob is down.
Yeah.
I'm up and you're down. Therefore, I'm looking
Yeah.
down at you.
I'm
Plus, I
sorry.
talk.
I have to be like that. I can't
You
stand
know?
it.
So what are you're bracing me down because I say I looking down on you. You are worthy of being looked down upon.
Absolutely.
What did they throw out of the window?
It was like a cup with. It looked
Oh,
like.
yeah.
Like you know, like when you eat like oranges or something like that,
Peels, uh-huh.
and then you put it in a little styrofoam cup and flung it right out. I tried
Yeah.
to find the number
and
what I
the
wrote down.
the peelings
It was
came
a silver
out too.
Nissan
Yeah.
Cube.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was so
Where was it?
angry on top of people
I
Stratton
don't
Highway.
know what level of person, like how you
Look
feel
down
so
upon people.
comfortable
Flinging
throwing
that out on a
on
highway.
the,
On a
that
high-
I cringe. That sends like all kind of.
Most people would have. Okay, and I'm not giving this right, but most people would have been like, okay, fling it in a bush because you can't see it, right? Until you
Right.
go to clean it up. But right on the road,
That's your
That's why when you
top
clear
dog
down all
nasty.
these bushes.
That's your
What's
top
that?
dog nasty person. They don't care.
TDN.
Yeah, they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
By the
way,
speaking of which, I know what I want to talk about. There are a number of things
what's that?
in the Atlantic.
Oh, you.
Yeah.
A number of
activity.
disturbances,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know. Okay,
They don't know.
they don't know.
They don't know what.
I for that this year.
Oh,
Well,
Don't come around here.
Okay.
I can't
I
take
done finished
that.
with that.
So because you offer that, they ain't coming.
Trust me, ain't nothing happening
The
with that.
word
I
was
done
put
tell-
out there.
Not this
the
year, buddy.
Eastern Seaboard of the U.S. They
Yeah.
in
But
trouble.
a lot of them look like they're going out to the northern, sea, but above us, in other
They
words.
say
Yeah.
category 4. What is
That's
the name
Florence.
of this? What's the name of this?
No.
Yeah, Florence.
Yeah. Well, that's.
That's
low.
going to be very
But
powerful.
I saw a thing. If you look on the Atlantic screen, you'll see a lot of disturbance out there. But they look to see they're tracking above us. So
Yeah.
we don't need that. We don't
Do
need
you know I finally got my check?
that. If we finally got her
I was
check.
looking at that. I'm like,
see
wow,
this?
people still get mail.
What check is that?
This is my check from Steve Harvey, right?
Oh, okay.
So,
How much that for?
$200.
I can look at it.
Yeah, you can look at it.
Oh,
Okay.
This was from
that's
April.
right.
I went to
Oh, 'cause you
Cali,
won.
right?
Holy smokes.
You see when that's postmarked? 30th of April.
April.
Yeah, I just get stuff from June and things.
And I
like
just getting this.
I just throw away bills because they don't be up to date.
Is that?
This almost stale dated. I gotta go hurry up deposit this.
Oh shoot! But that now, why? I mean, you couldn't track. Like you can't track. You couldn't track it.
It's a mail.
No, because it's mail. I mean, it's not like FedEx or
Yeah,
send
it's
us to.
mail.
No, I know, but
You don't track mail.
I'm
You can track
I'm
mail.
saying
You can?
Yeah, you can.
sometimes
Oh, I
I'm
didn't
saying
know that.
sometimes it could be sitting in our post office
what I'm saying.
box just for weeks.
Yeah, but you
Yeah,
check
but
the
you
post
can't
office
tra-
regularly, right?
Yeah,
Right. So it's
but
on
it was
weeks.
in there.
No, I'm saying before it even hit our box.
Oh,
No,
well,
send
they
that
don't-
to show
yeah.
him.
Oh, let me see. Oh, I get to see.
Don't call the figure.
Oh,
You're talking about him.
because he would.
$1 million?
Then we will come back to even more than my gas tank. Please ask my check.
The mother's upset. No. I thought it was 1.5. 1.5 million.
Wow.
I know that can't help me.
But sometimes things just sit around for
In the
know,
post office.
Yeah, just because
But
people
not, yeah,
came.
they're just saying getting here.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, wrong. It gets here. You're right.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It
here.
probably has been here for a
long
hot
time.
second.
Yeah.
For a long time.
It's done here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it don't take long for them to fly it in.
No.
It take long for them to sort it.
See, I was trying
Anyway,
to
that's my
Especially
good
diss
with
me
some
up just
sauce.
now.
No
But
sauce
it's
marks
mail.
on that.
It's mail.
South March.
Mail
Marks,
takes
yeah.
long.
You know, I frame in that.
Yeah. So anyway, what else is new?
I know we
You
have
see your
lots of-
boy
Yeah,
Nygad.
I
You
haven't
saw that
read
story?
it. I saw the headline.
Yeah.
I haven't read that. Yeah.
You have to
he
move
has to
his
remove
brain.
the thing. Yeah. No. I mean, how you feel about it?
Well, he was ordered to move it by the courts long ago.
I think this
And
one
he
is now
didn't.
enforceable. Something that I'd seen.
Well, those things are political will things, right?
Hold on, where is
You
it?
can have an
Where do
order,
they
but if
phrase
people
it?
don't want to do it, they don't do it. Yeah, so someone has to enforce it. It goes back to that enforcing thing.
No, man, it was something different this time around. It must be in the Tribune. I gotta look up the Tribune.
I think the thing that's different is his people ain't there. That's the difference.
That's my paper?
Oh yeah, sorry.
You know,
sorry.
it's the
You- I-
people's. It's the people's them. Ain't there? You know. By the way, our guest this afternoon is going to be Mr. McCary Leonard, who's an attorney out of Freeport, who I think will. You know, we always try to get people who have different perspectives on things, and Freeport obviously is going through. I think most people would say almost a crisis, in especially economically. So we'll get Mr. Leonard, who is a long time social activist and attorney at law, and we'll talk to him about what's going on in the ports. But oh, there he is. Yeah, he'll have a seat, and we'll be right with you, Carrie.
Oh, but this is not to cut you off, right? But this Peter Nygaard thing.
Yeah.
So he has the month to remove the barriers, right? They said this is the first court enforceable order against Mr. Nygaard in more than a decade. So that's what it was.
Well, there was one in a decade ago.
Okay.
So what happened then?
Mm-hmm.
The people then. On both sides, that's 5 years. That's two people. That's two sets of people. Now one set of people.
Yeah, that's true.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
good
different
point.
people this time. So so there you go, boy.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's good to see. It's good to see that. Anyway, we'll see what happens.
It's good to see what.
I just,
You don't know,
I know there are things that are slowly happening. We'll see. I was talking with some people in another agency that I don't wish to reveal at this time, but in good time we will, about enforcement. I think slowly, surely, that kind of stuff is starting to happen. But it's got to happen at a quicker pace if we're going to be. I don't want to harp on this, but going back to this thing with the litter, this is clearly an issue of enforcement because
Yes, it is.
enforcement molds behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You see, if you know that there are certain things that you do if there's going to be repercussion, and it can't be no $50 or no $35. That doesn't mean nothing for anyone. It's got to be punitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I aspire. Boy, listen, I just wish I was in control of some things, Because trust me.
I don't think
No,
so.
you listen, Rogan Smith. Let me ask you a question.
No, I don't
When it
think
comes
so.
to litter, right? You don't think you need to say, okay, if you get caught littering, throwing that cup out of that car, okay? You don't think there should be something that makes that person really think twice about throwing something out of that car
I agree
again?
with that, but you say if you were in charge
Of that particular thing.
I think you'd be soft on them.
So, what?
Yeah,
Ooh.
because you don't like to be hated.
No, hate it? Listen, you know what I don't like?
You don't like to be a
No.
target.
Let me be
So you
honest with you.
can't.
No, you're wrong on that.
Mm-mm.
You ask folks who will work with me. If you do something that is outside the scope, you're going to have to deal with it. If you litter, the law would be very straightforward. I don't want to waste time on that. And it's throwing something out the car, your car is impounded for 2 weeks. If you get caught, I got to figure out what you do if you get caught walking. Maybe we tie make you like them when you tie your lacing together. I don't know. Okay, lacing.
That's like Nabal.
Yeah. Okay. When it's got to be something. People trucks. You see on here by the lot opposite Chippingham. By Chippingham, right? They cleared that lot for parking for carnival and stuff. I see a big amount of garbage in there. Someone reversed their dump truck in
And
there.
threw it there.
And just dumped a load. Now, what should happen if they're caught? This is very simple. Whoever's the owner of that truck, well, guess what? That truck ain't on the road for a couple of months. You need to make something. There has to be a real punishment to say, you know what? If I get caught doing this, this is going to impact me. It can't be a tap on the wrist, $250, $50. No, it's got to be real. So I don't know why we don't go down that road.
Maybe give some incentives to people when they report these things.
Incentives to report and the punitive side, right? So in fact, it's $250 fine. That go to the place to report it, and your truck gone.
Yeah, how about that?
Or if you go like with Singapore,
Well, then it's
we can you. See, we don't want to go that level. I know we don't want to go to that extreme, but we can say your truck is off the road for a month. Now,
Hit
guess
'em
what?
where it hurts.
Here's the rule. Your truck don't have to be off the road.
Just don't do that foolishness.
You fire yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be back. Our guest this afternoon. We're going to talk to Candy for a bit, but our guest this afternoon is Carrie Leonard, and we'll get a very interesting perspective of what's happening down in Freeport. We'll be right back. I got to throw a little note out here. We had a person who's in the wedding business say, y'all bad for business.
Well, yes,
say,
yeah.
weddings rock. They say weddings
Yo,
rock.
y'all bad for my
Weddings
business
rock.
too, though.
Hashtag weddings
Right
rock.
here. Oh.
Well, listen, no, we're not bad for business. You know why? Because no one's
No,
checking
man.
for us like that.
No, man. I want people
No,
to have
people will
weddings if
continue
they
to
can
do what
afford
they
to have
want to
them.
do.
That's fine, man.
Trust me, these people
Shout out to
don't
that
care.
lady.
They don't care what we say.
No,
they having their
they
Tay
get it.
bridesmaids.
Anyway,
That's it. Don't
make
they
sure
might-
you still come
They
to
might
me for
cut
your
back
wedding
from
chat.
14. All right, Candy, let's talk about. We got
That's funny.
Carrie Lennon coming up in 10 minutes, so let's talk about what you're gonna.
We
What you're
were
talking
actually
about?
just continuing the conversation
Uh-huh.
last week, Miss Rogan, that we just started.
Yeah, she
About-
she pulled her hair tight today, so she can't remember.
All eyebrows up
Yeah,
to the floor.
yeah,
That's true.
That's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, when you
About-
put, how do you? Does it feel tight?
No.
Okay.
Sometimes I pull my hair too tight.
You're giving yourself a little facelift.
Like a little, what you call that, a stretch.
Look surprised all
Yeah,
the time.
uh-huh.
No, talking about racism and how it exists here in the Bahamas. We
Of
talk
course it
about
does.
it everywhere else. And you think, being in a country that is majority black, that racism happens from both sides.
Oh yeah. Well, everyone
And we don't
has
like,
the
but we
potential
don't
of
like to
being
talk
racist.
about that.
Every country,
That's so true.
I go back to this thing again. It's tribalism.
Hmm.
It's we call it racism, we call it nationism, you call it ethno-isms.
Mm-hmm.
It's tribes, because you have it within. That's why I don't think these subsets like racism make sense. It's your group against the other group, because there's subsets, right?
Right.
Like the people from Mayaguana don't like the people from Acklands.
Right, but we all
But we associate it with, the whole
yes, we
oppression
associate
and all
it
that
with
stuff.
white and black and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Well,
but
those
even
are the extremes, right?
Hmm?
Those are the extremes.
right, and we always we have these differences. Well, shoot, you were saying before we came on, just between black people,
Yeah.
and we
Well, look how we treat our Haitian brothers and sisters. We don't even talk about that one.
well, is that that's a black issue, or is that
I
I
you
think
from
it's
a
tribalism.
country?
Yeah, it's back
it's
to
more,
this tribalism thing. We call it xenophobic or
Right.
Yeah.
or ethnic.
It's not because they're black though.
No, it's not because
Oh.
they're black. I'm saying you're against people because they're not
they're
like
not
you.
like you, right? Or they're not from the same.
It's
know.
because
But
you just can't relate because there's a language barrier
No.
between the two. You don't think so?
You tend to.
I don't see Bahamians as having the same types of having the same level of animosity towards towards Cubans, for
Or what
example,
about
as
the
they would
Chinese
Haitians.
that are
Well,
here.
that's because it's what do you call it? It's volume, or I don't know the exact word. So, like for instance, if you go, I've experienced this. I went to school in Minnesota, and then I went to school in Georgia. Okay, now their prejudice or prejudices are based on kind of, imagined things or learned things, right? Whereas, say in Georgia, their prejudices are based on familiarity. It's like because there are a lot more black folks in Georgia than there are in Minnesota. So it's a whole range of reasons why it exists.
Mm-hmm.
I think here, we look at migrant workers. I mean, I'm going to use that term, migratory workers. And we say, okay, they're involved in menial tasks, et cetera, et cetera. And this is how countries all over the world do. Whoever's the people who are doing the menial task, that's how they look at them. Look at how, Americans look at Mexicans. Or Hispanic folks who are dealing with gardening or landscaping or, it's a human flaw. I better than you, Candy. It's sad, but it's true.
You were saying
Not the
something.
candy.
No. I know. But you were saying another thing offline, where with the a lot of black people feel like a black person cannot be racist
They're
against
not
they're not
capable of being.
capable, right? Or
Of
you
course they are.
can't be racist, or because you've been the oppressed for so long and all this other stuff. But you said something very
Well, I was saying that you can fight oppression without
being racist. But you do have, and in this country, yes, you do. You have black Bahamians who, straight out, are not don't want to deal with
other
white,
races.
with other, with white or other races.
I mean, it happens not only in the Bahamas but elsewhere. Listen, again, and that has to do with a lot of things. Like, for instance, racism or that separatism has a lot to do with when you don't know. It's easy to be racist if you don't say, for instance, no white people. So if you don't know any white person,
Right.
and you have these myths and these predispositions, what they are and all that, it's easier to be that way, right? Like a redneck may never even have met a.
But in this day and age, though, now I can understand back then. I can understand back then.
Is a redneck being racist to say that?
To say what?
To just say redneck, is that being racist to say that? I'm just checking myself. Is it?
I
Is
think
it?
I would have a problem with
Ken is my racist barometer, and he says yes. He's shaking his head.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize to the rednecks. I didn't mean to say that.
Jesus, you keep saying it.
But what is the equivalent of a black neck? What do we have?
What'd you say?
No, someone who.
To speak it poorly.
Well, I know what the equivalent is. I can't say
it. You can't say that.
I actually went to college with there's a girl in one of my classes. I can't remember where she was from, but she was homeschooled all her entire life. She never seen a black person, like
or
not even on TV.
A Vulcan.
Like like when she came to college, this was the first time, and she was the sweetest person. She had no.
I had a roommate like that.
She had no hang-ups or anything like that. We were we became quick friends and things like that. But in this day and age, even if you are in that setup, we have the internet in the palm of our hands.
Right.
Like even if you haven't physically been.
Oh, you will be exposed.
You're exposed. You see it. Like. So, I mean, that excuse, you can't use that excuse anymore.
My roommate, Paul Wadalevich.
You remember the name?
Oh, yeah, he's my friend.
That's
I can even
a
spell
heavy last name.
WOJTALWECIZ. Oh, I can't remember it now.
Yeah, so
but he was from Appleton, Minnesota. Population 850 people.
Wow.
And I've been there several times. And I could have sold a ticket. And he had never seen a black person except on TV.
Right.
But we had no issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just, listen. Remember, I always come back to this. There's nothing that is a formula. People have all sorts of experiences that determine how their outlook is. It's very hard to unbend that, depending on their history. But it is
Agreed. But the whole, I agree to that. But I mean, the whole series was that you have people who don't think that these things or this happens to them.
Of course
or
it does.
This is no, man.
Of course it does.
Have you ever had an experience, a negative experience with a white Bahamian or a white person in the Bahamas?
I can actually say I've never had any kind of issue with race or being from a different country. I've lived in 4 different countries, and I've not ever had an issue.
I've had most of my negative experiences right here in this country. Once in Georgia and once in California. But
like
here,
straight up.
Oh yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I bet
over here I've had people following me around the store. And a white person will come in the store right here in the same island. A white person will not follow the other person around, or they ask me repeatedly, "Can I help you?" Translation: "Get the hell out of my store."
It's so funny. It might have happened to me.
That is the translation. It's who's on the receiving end of it.
Have you ever had a black person treat you differently?
How you mean?
For sure. Well, now that's a different.
Not in that way.
No, not in that way, but differently.
Differently how?
Well, like for instance. You can
follow me around.
I know of. Let me put it to you clear. Let me put it to you very clear. I know of many people, and I've known this to happen, who perceive or have had happen when they go to a hotel, treated differently because they assume this isn't even racist. They assumed they were not a tourist. Okay, they assumed they were not a tourist because they were not white. And so they would say asked to leave an area because they thought this isn't a tourist area. This is a tourist.
Okay.
So I'm just saying people treat you differently.
I'm talking about straight up experiences when I walk into a store. I'm the only black person in this country in the store. other white people walk in behind me, and I'm the only one who all of a sudden you're so attentive, overly attentive to me, and in a most uncomfortable way to the point. And I'm very outspoken. I'll say,
well, I know
I don't need your help. You can help those individuals over there, and it's still a constant presence to the point where I say it's time for me to leave.
Okay. Just out of interest, when we go off here, I want to find out that store is. Because I want to find out what that is. Okay.
No problem.
All right, so we'll be back right after this. Candy, thank you very much.
Yes,
it's always a pleasure. We'll continue this discussion next week.
Well, no, not according to Rogan.
No, but she's racist that way. All right, we'll be back with Carrie Leonard.
No, man, don't be like that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with Rogan Smith, who's she's a victim, and so we recognize her and we.
I almost
put her. Would you almost did?
I'm a victim.
Yeah, you're a victim, and
we're all victims, baby.
We're all victims, but you're a victim, and we want to give her our condolences and our sympathies.
Yeah, you're being facetious.
Okay. No, I'm being humorous, but that's okay. That's what we do. Listen, victim. We have as our guest this afternoon, Mr. Kerry Leonard, who is an attorney. Now, Kerry Leonard is an attorney in Freeport, but before I want to get some background. Because, one of the things we try to do on the show is, you're known to many people, but not every single person may know you, especially since you spent a lot of time in Freeport. But you were in Nassau for a while,
I'm a
right?
Berry Islander originally.
A what?
My mummy taught me.
Hold on, time out, stop. A what?
A Berry Islander.
Okay, so that's one.
All right.
That's one Berry Island I know.
My
don't know another Berry Island.
My mummy taught me till I was 10.
Okay, so you're homeschooled.
So I was homeschooled.
Before that was in style.
Exactly, that's right. So... And then I lived in Nassau from 70 until 98. And as you know, I'm former president of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce.
That's where most people would have known you, yeah.
And the one thing two things I pushed for was privatization, which is kind of what we got with radio. The idea you could do it two different ways. You could either sell it all off or you could allow other people to have licenses. And the other thing was Sunday shopping.
Right, yeah, okay. I remember back.
You
I used to be at the Guardian
there were headlines
those days.
of me the Christian Council going
CC.
at it. Yep.
CL and CC.
Yep, but
I want to focus on another thing. I don't want to let it slide.
That's all right.
The Berry Islands.
Yeah.
Which one of the berries?
Bird Key between Fraser Hogg and Whale Key.
Yeah.
Whale Key, which was Betty Carstairs Island, and the interesting thing is...
How many people on Bird Island, man?
Today, nobody.
That's where you were born?
That's a private. It was a private island.
You were born on Bird Key?
No, I was born in London, but brought here straight back when I was young.
Well, what did your parents do in Bird Key?
My father was the manager for a man that lived 7 months of the year in the Bahamas and 5 months of the year in Switzerland.
Berry Islands. Okay. Good. All right. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. There you go. All right.
Okay. Because I don't know what to know Berry Islands.
But if you need me to come and trim the wick on your kerosene fridge, I can handle that for you. That's not a problem.
In my entire 60 years that I've never met someone who said, I'm from the Berry Islands. But anyway, now I have.
Okay. All right.
I thought they were just like, you don't even think of the Berry Islands.
Berry Islands.
But they're there. They're right there.
Yeah,
right? But you just
30 miles northwest of Nassau.
Your mind. It's like them islands. Like, what are those islands? When you're coming into Nassau. All right. So then you moved to Nassau. Obviously, you became an attorney, and you moved to Nassau. And then when did you decide to move to Freeport?
In 98.
98. Yeah. Okay. Now, you probably have had to deal with a lot of this stuff, so you probably can give a simple man's history to the simple man. Well, let me rephrase that. A simple description. A simple description of what has been happening over the past, say, 20, 25, 30 years in Freeport. Okay. Most people know about the Hawkesville Agreement. They only know the name. They don't know what it means. There's Freeport, which everyone thinks it's a... Well, actually, most people think Freeport is all of Grand Bahama, to be honest with you. Like, Florida is Miami.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So tell us just very briefly what the Hawkesville Agreement meant for Grand Bahama. Just synopsize that.
To give you an idea, when the Hawkesville Creek Agreement was signed in 1955, there were about 5,000 people on the whole island of Grand Bahama, period. Today,
and mostly in West End, East End,
East End, and the smaller settlements of Williamstown, Smiths Point, McLeanstown, etc.
Freeport was Pine Barren.
Pine Barren. Wasn't anything there.
Right.
But what they created was, and it was done by private enterprise.
Right.
So all the roads, when you go to Freeport, you are driving on a private road that is maintained by the Port Authority.
Yes.
Right.
And the other thing, most Bahamians come and they say to me, well, everything's duty-free in Freeport. No, it's not. Only if you have a license do you have stuff that's duty-free. But when I buy food for myself or if I buy anything for the house, I pay duty on it, just like anybody else.
Right.
As a matter of fact, when we were talking about real property tax, I worked it out. I would actually save about $600 or $800 a year if I paid real property tax versus having to pay a service charge, which you have to pay to the Port Authority or the
Except you get some actual services for that.
Well, I do, now,
exactly.
The one thing, and I can tell you, the one thing I noticed when I got to Freeport was my garbage got collected, and it still gets collected on the same day at the same time. Where before you'd listen to hear if the garbage truck was coming, man, you'd haul out to get that. It didn't matter if it was 2 a.m. But no, I will say that about it's well organized.
And so when you
well
say a license, because when you say a license, you're talking about because I can't be a license as an individual. So as a business, I can have a license, right?
As an individual, if you're running a business, you would have a license. But otherwise,
and that would then entail you to get like bonded vehicles and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you can only drive in the city
within the port area.
Limits.
But mind you, the port area is almost twice the size of the island of New Providence.
Okay.
You're talking about an area.
I didn't know that. I always thought it was like a small.
It's 32 miles from one end to the other and 18 miles across. Yeah. It's 230 square miles.
They don't have a shut-off thing when you get to the border. Just shut your car off.
But what's the consequences if you go outside that area?
Pay duty,
Customs hits you with a double duty on your vehicle and a fine.
Right.
So individuals then have 2 cars. One to if they want to,
one
for that area,
or you'd rent a car to go outside.
To go to West End.
To go to West End.
Exactly.
Which saves you a lot of money. I mean, you're saving a lot of money on duty on a vehicle.
Well, not so much now, quite frankly, because when you look at hybrids and things like that, and I got to give the government credit for doing that. But it's a well laid out, well organized thing, and also the airport, the harbor, was all built and constructed
by private enterprise.
Right. Nothing, it wasn't. The public treasury didn't incur any expenses in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a non-Freeport, I think I went to Freeport the first time in the 70s, and from a non-Freeporter's perspective, my view is this. Well, my perspective now is this: that apparently Mr. Pinling made a speech that literally brought the cranes to a halt.
True.
I had a friend who said that Freeport was jamming. You could be at a restaurant sitting next to Sammy Davis Jr., blah, blah, blah. And as soon as the speech happened, screech. Mm-hmm. People just sold off because, they just had the Cuba experience. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to go replicate that, putting capital in. Now, my perception is that what the speech should have done was talk about civil rights, i.e., listen, you're not going to discriminate against Bahamians, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what happened. What happened was there a fear that the government is going to come in and take over your enterprise? Was that what the nature of the speech was about?
I believe that was the fear that was created, yes. Right. And a lot of people just sold out.
Yeah.
And that
a poorly crafted speech.
Yeah. I don't know.
You don't know if it was intentional.
I have read a number of Cylinden's speeches,
right?
And it's sometimes it's just like he didn't quite finish what he was trying to say.
Okay.
And to clarify what he was saying. Like the
captive insurance thing, that same scenario we had.
We lost 90. We had 90%
in one speech
in the country. We had 90% of the captive insurance market, and today we may have 0.5%.
Right.
It's gone to Bermuda and Cayman. We lost a lot in one speech.
Right.
But coming back to Freeport, even though you had that crash, then it began to pick up again in the late 70s.
Right.
And no sooner did it get back on its feet did we get the Immovable Properties Act of 1981, which basically was trying to say that the everything's going to be reserved for Bahamians, or you've got to do this, or you've got to do that. So the land sales market also crashed. So when you crash the land sales market, at the same time, you crash the construction market.
But would the Hawkesbury Creek thing have superseded that? So in other words, you've got private land, right? Mm-hmm. But you're saying that this private land now that may have been owned by a foreigner, you had to sell it to a Bahamian.
No. What it said was if you were going to buy a piece of property. Now, bear in mind that there was about 60,000 acres of land that the Grand Bahama Development Company was trying to sell and develop and get people to come in and invest in. Right. So all of a sudden you say to everybody, hold on, if you want to buy this, in the old days, they were flying people in, getting you excited, getting you to sign up, and they were getting people to buy.
Right.
Now you put the brakes on, and you put and what happened was, unfortunately, the applications would go in, and they could sit there for 6, 8, 9 months. So you didn't know if people just got tired.
But what did the movable thing say that caused people to have fear? What did the movable? I can't, but I want you to explain it. What did the Immovable Properties Act say?
The Immovable Properties Act basically said that if you were going to buy, you had to also set out when you were going to build. You had to provide all sorts of information on yourself. Mm-hmm. And that the object was originally to kill speculation. Not only in Grand Bahama,
Bahamas,
but the whole country.
Right.
And by that point, I was already practicing law. Right. And I can tell you, we noticed a hit on the number of conveyances we were doing.
How would you balance that? I mean, even right now, as you know, the government just this caused a lot of the misinformation that went out there. The government actually put out an increase in property tax on vacant land owned by foreigners to reduce speculation. I think it's at 2% now, vacant land. So how would that have been? That would have been more of the type of thing you would have done.
And not only that, the biggest problem and I will say this for governments these days, they're beginning to consult more with the public and everything else before they bring something into effect. But the problem was, in those days, government would announce it overnight.
Right.
And so you wouldn't have any time. There'd be this instant shock factor. And you get to a point when you keep getting these shocks that you say, wait a minute, leave the Bahamas alone.
Yeah. And I can't take the chance.
Yeah.
And that really hurts us. We now have a reputation.
Switching on a dime.
On a dime.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that makes life very difficult.
Certainty is required for investment.
Business has to have certainty. Yeah. There's no doubt about that.
All right, let's talk about Freeport and what could have been and what should have been. When I look at, I go to Abaco every now and again, and I drive from Marsh Harbor to, just before Sandy Point. Just miles and miles of stuff that will become prehistoric. No one's going to do anything. Okay? Andros, even worse in terms of the amount of land. Freeport, just vast compared to our population. Okay? Mm-hmm. Even if we wanted to be pioneers, I always think of the Bahamians as having the potential to be pioneers. We don't have enough people to develop all of that. So I see Freeport as a model where you say, okay, you, Mr. Man, you come in, and like Orlando did with Disney. Disney said to Orlando, he said one thing: I'm going to develop this, but this is what I want. Total control. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, you can't discriminate. You can't do that kind of stuff. You have to allow equal access and all that. Why would we not have to encourage that type of development? Is that even like a boogeyman just to say that?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that we have this fear of somebody else running our country. Mm-hmm. And that's not really the case, because the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement has specific obligations in it. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I think one of the reasons that Grand Bahama isn't doing as well is that the Grand Bahama Port Authority their feet have not been held to the fire with respect to the commitments that the Grand Bahama Port Authority Limited and Grand Bahama Development Company agreed to do over the years.
Right.
And that to me is one of the problems. The solution to Grand Bahama is not straightforward. I think you've got to look at a number of things. The Grand Bahama Port Authority. Mm-hmm. You need to look at immigration. But immigration from a different perspective. Right. One of the best things and best examples of immigration is Canada, who's been able to cherry pick the very best. You think of the bright young Bahamians. Yeah. Where are they going? They're going to Canada. Mm-hmm. And that's because there's opportunity for them there. Mm-hmm. But also, if you look at immigration in the past, now I'm a product. I came out of Seligman Maynard. I was articled to Ralph Seligman. Right. You had a foreign lawyer who you allowed to remain in this country and practice law. Mm-hmm. He had a friend called Trigano who just happened to own some clubs called Club Med. Right. By having that one man here, you created 1,000 jobs for Bahamians and construction jobs.
Listen, Kerry, you're speaking to the choir. We've had minister after minister, especially in the new regime and the former regime, people like Ryan Pinder, who we talk about this kind of thing that we don't grasp, that the reason why Bahamians enjoy the standard of living we do today is because of direct foreign investment.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yep.
And yet we have this noose around its neck that we every now and again the switching on that we just pull on.
Yep.
We just choke it.
Yep.
And for what? We're taking the breath out of, and I don't hate to make all these metaphors, right? But we're taking the breath out of the potential to thrive.
Exactly. And it makes no. Look at Cayman. Look at Turks and Caicos. Cayman unemployment is 4.2%. Turks and Caicos is 6%. We're up. Well, who knows? 10, 15%.
But they're colonies, and so they didn't have that kind of nationalistic xenophobia that comes, or the xenophobia that comes with that.
That's what's killing us.
Yeah.
The Canadians, on the other hand, they say, right, you're an intelligent individual. We want you to come to our country.
And we're keeping them out.
And we're keeping them out. Those people also have contacts. They will bring foreign direct investment here.
I heard of an example. I don't know if it's accurate, but I'll make it as an example because I use it, but I'll use an example. That the motorcycle people, Bacardi, you know about motorcycle?
Harley?
No, Bacardi. It's Italian.
Oh, Bugatti.
Bugatti. Yeah, Bugatti.
One of them.
Bugatti,
right. Yeah. Wanted to set up in Freeport their design team.
Right.
Because they're trying to get out of Italy.
Yep.
They're doing tax. They wanted to bring their design team. They needed, 40 work permits or whatever for these people. Now, the first response is, oh, no. You can't get all them work permits.
Why?
Now, the question is this. Who are they replacing? The motorcycle designers here? That's the first question I want to ask, right? So, okay, now we get past that. Okay, now, let's look at what can happen. A Bahamian who wishes to go into mechanical engineering and mechanical design, where does that Bahamian have to go to design motorcycles? Italy,
Nowhere.
Canada, wherever.
Not here.
So suppose that company then came here and set up here. So now this creates opportunity for Bahamians to be in that field here.
Absolutely.
Not to mention the possible manufacturing spin-offs, all sorts of things. So, so the question then is, and this comes down to this, it's a sad question. Why does leadership over the many decades not see this? There are people sitting in this room, there are people sitting outside this room that see it. How is it that those people aren't involved in the decision-making process?
I think because initially, when we got independence, there was this, don't worry, I will protect you and make sure you...
That is absolutely right.
Did Pat tell you? Oh, I was going to tell you what Pat said.
And I use this not only for the man who in the street who is working, but also for many businesses here. There is an entitlement.
Protectionism.
I'm entitled to a job, I'm entitled to my business, and I'm entitled to be protected.
You always say it because of the passport.
Right, the passport.
That's right.
Pat Ramming was on yesterday, last week.
Thursday.
When we were driving home, Pat said, he tells this story about how basically when he gives me this evolution, but when the UBP and the PLP were then fighting for power, they both had the same story after independence, and that is, we'll take better care of you.
Yep.
Okay? That's what the whole ideology was. Trust us, we'll take care of you.
Yep.
Okay, and that's how if you think about everything, the government, you alluded to it, the government takes care of you. They give you a government job. They give you a house. Government house. You can't lose this. It's. I don't know how we break out of it though, Kerry.
Well, I think one of the things is if you do open up immigration, you then get cross-fertilization of ideas. When we look at our economy, we're struggling. We look at our education system, and the point is, the more we keep people out, the more we go along with blinders of just our thought process, and our thought process is getting narrower and narrower and narrower.
You can't function with the same gene pool.
You can't, and you need these ideas. The rest of the world is going global, and we are becoming more and more insular by the day.
Well, you know what kills me? And again, it has, and by the way, I'm very openly critical about just the whole public administration. Fred Mitchell was on it. He finally, I don't know if he finally, he did it before. He talked about public administration being an issue. Ryan Pinder talked about it. We have, why don't we simply see this? That what we are employing is not working.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Okay? It's one thing to say, yeah, for that.
But they know it's not working, it's just not willing to do anything about it.
Well, but we don't like change.
We don't like change.
We don't like change.
I don't like that cliche because I understand that cliche, right?
But
the reality is, if you're everyone's complaining.
That's true.
Okay, everyone's complaining. This sucks.
They don't have a job.
This sucks. This isn't working. Even if they have a job, that's not enough money, and this and all that. So if the math of it is, in order to grow in order to succeed, in order to get better, you have to grow your economy. Why don't they catch on, Kerry Leonard, that what we're doing now is not accomplishing that growth?
I think because you have a number. There are a number of reasons. Mm-hmm. One, and I come back to the entitlement that businesses seem to think they have. Mm-hmm. They want to protect what they've had over the years, generation by generation, in many respects.
Right.
I think of kids that either I went to school with or my son went to school with, and it was just a matter of fact, you're going to work in daddy's business.
Yep.
Whether you get a university degree or not, how good you get at it or not, daddy's just going to put me there. And I've got the exclusive, and ain't nobody coming in to mess up my exclusive.
Yeah.
Now, and no, that's true.
I know it's real.
If you allow foreigners to come in, and by the way, when we talk about Grand Bahama, I would say to any permanent resident in Grand Bahama, even if we didn't give them the right to work, please start a business and hire one Bahamian. Mm-hmm. Right. A number of these people, I know I'm going off the topic. A number of these people are wealthy individuals who've done extremely well in their businesses. They've got nothing to do. They'd be quite happy to start a business. And my guess is probably 50, maybe even 75% of them would mentor the Bahamian who's working with them. And when they die, they'll probably leave them the business.
It's probably maybe. Listen,
I know these people.
The thing about this, Rogan Smith, right? Well, we're going to take a break, and then I'm going to really throw a puzzle at you that I want people to think about. We'll be right back. Mm-hmm. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here. I don't. Well, the question I was going to ask first, and then we'll get to that point, was, can you imagine if in New Providence we had to deal with the fact that if Grand Bahama completely collapsed, that population would have to be absorbed here? What we have to look at, you see, this is why I get frustrated with thought process. You talk about looking at the big picture, and I don't know what your position is on this purchase of the hotel. I see it as an absolute necessity, simply because we cannot absorb this kind of seismic loss.
Agreed.
It's not anything anyone wants to do.
No.
It's not desirable. It's not economically viable. But the alternative is chaos, is a nightmare.
Well, I can't say too much because I've been appointed as one of the members of the board of the company that's going to buy the hotel.
But no one else listens.
But I am certainly, but I've been saying things for the past 15 months. I think maybe they put me on the board to shut me up from the newspaper.
But say it anyway.
But quite honestly, you're absolutely right. We had to do it. Mm-hmm. On top of that, in spite of all the talk about the money, originally when you look at the value of the hotel and what people were asking for, even now if you say, okay, it's more than we should be paying, it's a much more reasonable price than it was, and the government is getting an asset until they can sell it. Yeah. And they
it's been lose on the asset. They may lose. But what is a loss? That's the thing,
in the
right?
short term, you might lose, and I have to be careful what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
But if you bring in the right group who then spends X amount, you'll get that back on the taxation of not directly from the company that's coming in, because they'll probably, like any hotel, build it duty free. Yeah. But the employment and as I say, if I'm working in Grand Bahama and I'm buying something for myself, I'm paying VAT, I'm paying all the customs duty and everything else.
Direct and indirect.
Correct. So you would gain indirectly, I think, far more.
Than the loss. I want to ask you something, and we'll get back to this thing about Freeport specifically. So when I go to Freeport, and I don't take offense to this, it's just an observation from an ignoramus, I feel a kind of, there's no history, there's no je ne sais quoi, I just feel like there's some nice roads. You don't see the beach till you go to it. Here you drive along the beach. You don't even know if it's a beach till you get to the beach. It's like characterless. And I'm not saying that in a negative way.
You're right.
We could be in Vero Beach, down the road or something like that. It doesn't matter. What needs to happen, I think, Kerry Leonard, is we have to find investors with vision.
Agreed.
You had that with Wallace Groves and Jack Hayward and those guys, right?
Yeah.
we need that again. You can't just open up a hotel there and say, okay, we're going to be a Marriott and come down to visit us. It's got to be some kind of greater vision
beyond the hotel.
Now the interesting thing is, Sol Kersner did go up there first.
Yeah.
I mean, but
I didn't know that.
He was guided not to be there.
Okay.
Heineken. They're your sponsor, one of your sponsors.
Yeah.
Heineken was going to Freeport first, and they were told, no, you're not going to do it in Freeport. You're going to do it somewhere else. So in many ways, Freeport brought a lot of business to the country, which then the government of the day directed to other islands, and usually it wound up in Nassau.
Yeah. And see, this is where the whole local government thing comes into play as well. You should be allowed to deal with your own negotiating and stuff for investment. You shouldn't have to have a heads of agreement from Nassau to open up a brewery in Freeport. The only thing you should have to worry about from the brewery perspective is to meet environmental codes, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, their thing was immigration at the time.
Well, again,
and that was the problem.
Yeah. We got to, the key, Rogan, we say it over and over, it's a common theme. We say common themes. The key to us really making this country grow is we've got to liberalize our immigration policy.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about, this is a conflation of illegal immigration and structured planned immigration.
Exactly.
We're not talking about open the floodgates.
No.
When does that happen, though?
Canada doesn't have.
They're hardcore. You can't get in there.
If you have a university degree, you're welcome to come.
I better go and apply now. People 60 they be okay?
I don't know.
Or too late for us?
Maybe too late for us,
But how do we open that door? How do we get the people who are in power to hear that? Because it could be too late at some point.
Well, we're getting very close to it being too late. We are really getting very close to it being too late. Yeah. And the reason I say that is if you look at the government accounts of the day, and I we are very close to needing. And I don't know how they've managed to stave it off for the last couple of years, but needing to go to the IMF for funds.
We ain't going there. And you push it off like that.
And you look at Greece, and you see what happens. I mean, they still got nearly 25% unemployment.
Maybe that's where we get to where we are at our knees. We then start opening up.
Well, that may be, but I mean we don't have. The point is, let's put it this way:
we need courageous leadership. That's all.
I may be sick. I can go to the doctor and take an injection of immigration, or I can wait until I wind up in ICU and I'm nearly dead.
That's a good analogy.
And see, what gets me about this whole immigration argument is this, and you're in that circle of understanding and seeing on the ground what's happening. The noise I hear being made is so way off the mark. So in other words, I run a company. I own a Silicon Valley type company. I want to bring in some Silicon Valley guys. Who am I hurting?
Oh, no. You see, then applications will have to be made to immigration, but then you've got to go to labor. Recently, I've been through this for a client just recently. We put an application in for somebody who's very technical. There aren't any Bahamians here who do it. We waited 11 weeks for labor to decide, we don't have any Bahamians who are doing that.
Yeah, but I can tell you that.
Well, you and I, but not only that, the fact of the matter is at a certain level, why are we going for certificates of labor?
Right.
At a certain level, you really shouldn't have to go through that.
It should be you put an ad in the paper. Theoretically, I mean, I'm just being devil's advocate now, right?
Yeah.
Because listen, let me tell you something. There are two elements of immigration. There are investors who say, look, I'm coming in with my $1 million or $2 million, and I want Kerry Leonard with me.
Right. Let them have him.
Okay? Then there's some people who just say, you know what, I need a, crypto, cellular, light, whatever.
Right.
So, okay, but I don't really care where it comes from, but I need one.
Yep.
I put an ad in the paper, no one applied. So Kerry Leonard from Alaska is coming in.
Right. Yeah. What's the problem? I'm going to hire 30 people to run my business who are going to be
Why don't they get the math? What's with the math thing? Well, we got a D in that, so...
Anyway, I wanted to talk about the WTO.
Yeah.
I know I read last year you were talking about the fact that if we embrace WTO, it would modernize our economy. There's still a lot of skepticism from a lot of Bahamians. Just go into that a little bit, considering that the Bahamas really doesn't have, when it comes to in terms of dollar value, a lot to export beyond tourism, as far as I'm concerned. So how is How is us embracing WTO going to help us?
Well, I think there's one element of this, and BAIC has been working on farms and all sorts of things like that. In Freeport, there is an individual who is producing free-range organic eggs. At least, I should say, he says he is. But where's the standard? Where's the stamp? If I'm a hotel, sure as heck not going to buy from him.
Right.
Because if my guest gets sick with one of his eggs, my insurance company isn't going to pay it because you should have got a certified organic thing and you should know where you're getting it from and you ought to know all the standards.
Absolutely.
So under WTO requires standards. It puts standards all over the place. And so he would then you would have a certification process that he would have to follow. And then he would have the same certification because one of the things that WTO is it standardizes a lot. As a matter of fact, the government has passed and now is beginning to implement the Food Safety Bill, which was driven by World Trade Organization and, I should add, the Economic Partnership Agreement, which the Bahamas signed up to in 2008. That Economic Partnership Agreement also drove things like VAT, etc., because it was already starting to drive the cost of duty down. So from the point of view of production, I think it would greatly enhance the ability for Bahamians to be able to sell their actual produce, certainly to hotels, and quite frankly, if you want to sell your eggs to Miami, you would be able to sell your eggs to Miami because you would have a standard that is world recognized. And if you have signed an agreement, and maybe the States is a difficult one, but maybe the DR or somebody, you would be able to send your product there because you have a trade agreement with all the other countries around the world. We are the only country, and it doesn't. Yeah. Look at services. You think of the number of head offices that left the Bahamas after 2000 and wound up in Trinidad and Barbados and the financial organizations. Why? Because they were in the World Trade Organization and we weren't. We cannot protect an industry. You take polymers, which produces styrofoam pellets. They came to an agreement with Mexico. They were going to double the size of the plant in Freeport. The Mexicans recognized the Bahamas was not a member of the World Trade Organization and doubled the duty overnight. That put an end to that contract, which meant there are 100 Bahamians who would have had jobs who don't have jobs.
What I'm learning, because I'm in a working group with the WTO, is that we are far behind on being prepared because rather than thinking outward, we're continually thinking inward. We're thinking about keeping people out instead of how we can venture out.
That's right.
So, for instance, Rogan, let's say building a plumber. We don't have in place, to my knowledge, the accreditations and the legislation that say that this plumber meets this international standard, so that plumber could qualify for a job anywhere on the planet. Okay, now the plumber over there can come here. Based on WTO because so they do benefit. Meet those criteria. But we aren't ready.
Benefit
and
that's
an excellent point. When they were building the hotel in Grand Bahama in 2000, I found that I was asked to prepare a license for somebody who was going to install railings for the hotel, the balcony railings. And I was driving by the Sandals project here, and I knew that Cavalier was doing it. Right. So I called Tippy Lightbourne to ask him why it was so difficult to install these railings. He says, it's got nothing to do with the ability. He says, my people install them, and that's what they're going to do at Sandals. The difference is that when you have these big projects, and Bahamians will lose out on these big projects unless they wake up to this, the major, like a Syntex Rooney, gives a bond. They had to provide a bond to Hutchison. That bond is insured. So if I fall behind, I can claim on the insurance. But I cannot claim on the insurance if I haven't been using certified people on my construction site. So that is why they were allowed to bring in foreigners to put on railings that Bahamians are perfectly capable of doing, but Bahamas doesn't have the certification system there, so they can get the job.
And then when we go to try to do certification, a group of people will go, well, you see, they're trying to discriminate against us and all. It is this constant, you know what it's like, Rogan, at the very simplest level? You went and through your industry, et cetera, went and got a degree. Okay? And then someone wants to say, well, who you think you are? You know, who you think you better than me? Yes, I am, because I went and I got this. You can do it. Nothing's stopping you. Or you can become accredited in something.
Right.
But we've got to stop this babying of us.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. And as a result, we're just shrinking and shrinking. It's got. I'm just looking, and that's why we have this show, Carrie Leonard. And I hope you can come on again sometime. We've got to find the key that unlocks this thing that is holding us back. It's a simple thing.
It's a mindset.
It's a mindset.
It is a mindset, and it is killing us at the moment.
In every sphere. In every single sphere.
Let me look at Cayman. And I look at Cayman because you've got a land area that's actually slightly smaller than the port area. Right. You've got a population that's about 70,000 if you include all the expatriates and everybody there as well. After the hurricanes here in 2004, as you know, we said, oh, well, Grand Bahama got hit by the storms. That's why they're not doing well. The Royal Oasis shut down the Old Princess, and that's killed everything. Cayman had $14 billion invested in it between 2004, after Hurricane Ivan had nearly wiped them completely out, where the water was practically washing across half the island.
Because it didn't take 50 years to process something.
That's right. And their whole that's absolutely right. And their unemployment is 4.2%, and in Freeport ours is probably 15 or 20%.
I spoke to a public servant recently, Mr. Leonard, and I said to him, and I'm not going to reveal his name or the potential area it was in. I said, let me ask you a question. And I didn't want to put the blame on him because there may be resource issues, etc. I said, but are you frustrated by the fact, or are you aware of the fact, that what you do or don't do impedes the growth of Bahamians and the Bahamas? Or does it just not matter? You know, and he's kind of stymied. But I think it's a resource issue. But the question is, why aren't the resources there? You know, we talked, Ryan was on about how, these various permits, etc. We just can't get them through.
Part of it is because we don't have time limits in our legislation. If I put an application in for a trademark in the States, they must come back to me in 21 days. But usually I've got the whole thing through in 6 to 8 months. You can wait 3 to 5 years, literally, in the Bahamas today for a trademark. No.
Excuse me, sir. I waited on something for 18 years.
Okay. And what is it? It's under consideration.
Well, I don't even know if they knew what it was.
Definitely under consideration.
No, but
we've got to. This is where the revolution. We talk about politicians, etc. The revolution has to occur with our expectations. And I say this in closing to you, that there are people like you, and we bring it up every show, who are in positions of influence, who must have the keys to the success and should be lobbying for those keys. So, for instance, how much effort, Carrie Leonard, and I'm putting it on you, have you and others put on putting into legislation time limits?
I have written, whenever I've had any opportunity to comment on legislation, I have been putting in time limits and accountability. Yeah. And I noticed when they redid the airport and allowed new group, the same clauses that have been yanked out of a draft I'd proposed went back in again to make certain people accountable.
I mean, we certainly have. But the question I put to you like that is, I was being sort of facetious in that
you're right.
we seem to be lobbying or not lobbying for the wrong things. We need to put some kind of emphasis on focus on what are those things that are going to unlock this grip.
Good idea. Yeah.
Okay, and it just seems that we all talk in singular voices, but the coming together of the influencers don't occur to say, okay, this is we have problems at immigration, we have problems at the lands and service, we need time limits. Otherwise, those things are granted without.
Because we time limits will drive that.
The CEB has that, right? The Commercial Enterprise Bill.
Yeah, that's got time limits.
Yeah. Carrie, you're going to have to come back another day. There's a lot more. What we'll do is we'll use you for now and we'll have to fly in at our expense. We're going to have to use you as our Freeport go-to guy. Mr. Berry Islands. Jesus, I can't believe it. Anyway, listen. All these years, Rogad Smith, How you always talk? Barry Adams have a funny talk?
No.
Okay. Like Spanish Russell's? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kerry Leonard, for coming on. It was very enjoyable. And hopefully we'll see you again.
Yep, definitely.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Let us know when you're in Nassau so we'll plan the show around you.
Okay.
All right.